Hi, everyone. My name is Zoe Root, and I am Senior Policy Counsel at American University. And I feel so fortunate to be joined today by a former client of mine, Tracy Sewell, who I represented when I was a public defender at the Bronx Defenders. As was mentioned earlier today, the Bronx Defenders is a holistic defender office in the South Bronx. They offer a number of services in addition to criminal defense, including offering attorneys for all sorts of legal matters, including civil and family, and providing client advocates and investigators. It is incredibly powerful and emotional for Tracy to be here today. As she'll tell you later on, DC is actually where she's from and where her story starts. So it's very impactful to have her here in the city where her story starts. But I didn't know any of that when I first met Tracy. And when I first met Tracy, I never could have known what her childhood was like. Because you will see what an amazing person she is today, but I am telling you, you do not know Tracy Sewell until you walk around the South Bronx with her. Because if you walk around the South Bronx with Tracy Sewell, you will hear kids yelling, "Hi, Miss Tracy!" They come running up to her, and no matter what she is doing or how busy she is, she stops what she's doing, she throws open her arms, she scoops them up, she remembers their names, the last time she babysat for them, and in some cases, the last time she babysat for their parents. Tracy Sewell is the mother hen of the South Bronx, and it was one of the great privileges of my life to get to represent her as her public defender. And there is no way I could have known what the horrors of her childhood were, but it was those horrors that brought her to meet me in my capacity as a public defender. And we are so lucky to have her voice here as someone who was directly impacted by the criminal justice system that we have spent the entire day talking about. And we are so lucky to have your voice with us. So welcome, Tracy. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you all. And I'm honored and happy to be here.
So we have about half an hour together, and you have an incredibly powerful story that I want everyone to hear all of. So let's start at the beginning. As we mentioned, you were born here in DC. What was your early childhood like?
It was great. I was with my mom, so I was with my dad.
And how long did you live in DC before you moved to New York?
Until I was like 6.
And tell me a little bit about what changed once you moved to New York.
It was like moving to hell.
Can you tell us a little more about that?
My mother was an alcoholic to where she met this guy who was a Muslim, and he was also a child molester, to where he started molesting me, my sisters, and then he introduced me to this guy, and I was a victim of trafficking.
I know this is incredibly hard for you to talk about, especially in front of a room full of strangers. And I do also want to acknowledge that 2 of your sisters are here in the audience to support you. So thank you for sharing that with all of us. How long did the trafficking go on for?
For about 15 years.
And was it all at the hands of your stepfather, or were other people involved?
It was other people involved, to where I got away from that situation, and then I got into another situation to where I found myself on the street turning tricks, Johns.
And that was because you were working for pimps, right?
Correct.
And how, while you were in that situation, you ultimately were arrested as a child, right?
Correct, at 16.
What was that experience like for you to be a 16-year-old girl who is getting victimized at the hands of her stepfather and then arrested by the police?
It was like nothing. It was like I got arrested, I got released, and thrown right back into the hands of the pimp.
So when you say it was like nothing, what do you mean by that?
Like no one was there for me. The criminal justice system never took the time out to say, listen, this young child is 16 years old. Like, where's her parents? How can we help her? And to where they put me back in the hands of a pimp.
And how long did that go on for, that you were getting arrested for prostitution?
Half my life.
And while you were in the trafficking situation, how did you cope with what you were dealing with?
I used crack cocaine.
Who introduced you to crack cocaine?
The pimp.
And how did that affect your day-to-day life?
I just got high. I just used drugs. I smoked more and more and more crack. I became a crack addict.
And I mean, that was a huge turnaround from what your early childhood was like.
Yes.
How did you ultimately get yourself out of that situation?
Well, I had left and ran away from the pimp, and I had moved away to where I was pregnant with my third child, to where I was addicted to crack cocaine. I had 2 of my children removed from me. And my third child, I had a little support behind me, and I was able to pick up and try to get myself together, but yet I was still addicted to crack. And I was trying to raise my kids with a crack cocaine habit, and since I had to have it, it led me back to the streets in order to support my habit, because that's all I knew at that time. I got arrested in 2002. I went to treatment court, a place called Young Mothers. And I learned to relive life because I've never, ever had a chance to become clean. And when I went to Young Mothers, Russell Oliver was one of the counselors there, and he stood on top of me, letting me know I am somebody, that I am just not a hooker, a prostitute, or a whore in the streets, that I am a human being, and that I can do better than what I'm doing. And thank God to Judge Espinosa. She played a close role in my life, because the first time in my life I was getting rewarded for good behavior, and no one was putting me down.
I know this is really hard to talk about, Tracy. Please take your time.
And I started to love me. I never knew how to love myself. They taught me how to look in the mirror and says, love yourself, tell yourself every day that you love you. No one loved me. And to where in my community, I love everybody. Every child that steps in front of me. Everybody that's having a critical situation. I just do my best to be my best. And to try to understand everyone that I come in contact with, to where nobody ever has to endure anything that I ever went through in life. It wasn't an easy road at all. And I'm just so happy to live the life that I live now, because I lived in hell for a very long time. And I had no one who was there for me.
Thank you, Tracy. And I would really like to highlight some of the amazing things that you are doing now and the ways that you have turned your life around. You are not only a mother to your 18 and 19-year-old daughters, but you are working 2 jobs, both as a home health aide and as a school bus matron for developmentally disabled children.
Could I just comment on that?
Yes, please do.
Okay, the reason why I'm a home health aide is because, do not laugh, I go into people's home, they're in wheelchairs, they're laid up in bed, and I'm always lively, and I go into their homes, they says, thank God you came, you make us feel alive. And I love making people feel alive. I felt dead for a long time. So if I'm able to encourage someone to feel better, to do better, that's exactly what I do. So I became a home health aide, so I can take care of the elderly to make sure they're well.
Thank you, Tracy. I'd like to turn to how you and I met and how I came to become your public defender. Can you tell the audience a little bit about that?
I went to probation, I believe, to get a disability act of relief. I went twice. The first time I went, they threw my papers in the garbage.
So just to let everyone know who's not familiar with New York law, so a certificate of relief from disabilities is a piece of paper that essentially says the court has forgiven this person for a crime that they were convicted of. So Tracy had gone to get that certificate of relief and was denied.
Yeah, she threw them in the garbage.
And so how did you and I meet?
I didn't give up. I went back again. And to where when I went back again, I went to probation and I filed again for a disability act of relief. They still gave me a hard time to where I was arrested 31 times in my life, I believe, to where they actually didn't want to do the paperwork. So I went to Bronx Offenders and I says, listen, I'm trying to work, I'm trying to take care of my family, I'm trying to do the right thing. I came from a rough road, and I'm doing my best to go down the right road. So Mr. Mac Diaz was like, go back. I was pissed off at him. I'm like, go back. I've been there already. So I went back twice. And the third time that I went back, I came back to Mr. Mac Diaz, and they said they don't care what you say. They'll take their time doing it. Mr. Mac Diaz got kind of upset at them, says, I'm going to start a paper trail. So finally, end of story, I got my act of disability relief papers. And soon after that, Mr. Mac Diaz contacted me, and he says, I have some lawyers that want to speak to you, and they would like to hear your story. And that's when I was introduced to Ms. Zoe Root and her team. And my first reaction when he called me, you're not going to believe this. What have I done now? Lawyers want to speak to me. I'm not used to that. So I thought I might have done something because my whole life, I always felt like a problem because of the situation I was in. And the team of lawyers, they came and spoke to me, and I was able to tell my story for the first time ever in my life, to where it felt good to tell my story.
And ultimately, we filed a motion for Tracy asking the court to vacate her 31 convictions that she had accrued at the hands of her traffickers. And not only did the judge grant the motion, but she made an incredibly powerful speech at Tracy's court date. And I'd like to read from the transcript. On that day, the judge said to Tracy, Ms. Sewell, I have your attorney's motion, and I'm going to grant the motion. But I feel I need to say something too. It's not often that I'm at a loss for words, but I really have struggled with what to say to you today. It goes without saying that what you have been through and what you have made of yourself is so tremendous that any words I could say would pale in comparison to the reality of what you have done, what you have overcome, and what you are giving back to your community. I also want to say to you, I'm sorry. And I want to explain what I mean by that. When someone says, I'm sorry, there are two different meanings. One is the I'm sorry that you say when something bad happens. When I say, I feel your loss, I console you for your loss. The other I'm sorry is when I did something to hurt you, and I'm saying, I regret doing that, and I want to make amends. I want to say both of those to you today. The first kind of I'm sorry is the sympathy kind. I'm sorry for what happened to you and your family. I'm sorry you had to go through that. In reading your affirmation, I see you may still somewhat blame yourself. You were a child. Thank God your sisters had you to take care of them the way you did, because you were a parent to them to some extent. And maybe things would have been even worse for them but for you. You had no responsibility and you couldn't because you were a child. So I'm sorry that you had to go through that. And the other I'm sorry is the one where I did something wrong. So as I'm sitting here, I am a representative of the government. I am the government, I am the state, and as the state, I am saying to you, I'm sorry that the state harmed you, that the state arrested a child and convicted a child, that the state school did not come looking for you, that the city hospital did not see what you came to the hospital with and do something about it. You know, time and time again, the state, the police department looked at you as a child and as a victim and did nothing, and even victimized you more. And I'm giving you an official apology from the government. I wish that didn't happen. I can assure you that that's why we're here today and why we do what we do is so that that doesn't happen again. I'm not going to tell you we don't arrest children anymore, because we do. We arrest children for being victims, but we don't convict them, not in this courtroom anyway. We don't convict them, but I still think we have a long way to go. But it's because of the courage of people like you that we're able to do this a little more every day. How did that make you feel when the judge said that to you?
Alive.
What do you mean by that?
My criminal background, history was used against me in everything that I did, no matter how well I did it, to where I became a foster parent and I took great care of my kids. I still have kids that call me, Miss Tracy, how you doing? I'm in high school. But because I had 31 convictions and they hired me to become a foster parent and to where anything can happen being a foster parent, a case can be called, the ACS case, where the social workers come to your house to investigate cases. And when they came to investigate the cases, I did nothing wrong. But because of my criminal background, they used it against me. Now that I no longer have a criminal background to where I'm treated like you. Everybody in this room with a criminal background, nothing good happened for me. I was treated like a criminal. I've never harmed nobody. I was harmed.
That's so true. Thank you, Tracy. And I'm thinking back to that day in court and after the judge's speech. While it was incredibly powerful, it was actually you who stole the show that day. After the judge made her speech, you said to her, "Judge, can I hug you?" And she said yes. And you went up to the bench and shared a long and tearful hug with the judge. And thereafter, the prosecutor made a speech himself, and when he started talking about the powerful work he knew that Tracy had done as a mother, he broke down crying, as did the prosecutor sitting behind him. The entire courtroom was in tears. And Tracy went over and she hugged the prosecutor. What was it like for you in that courtroom that day, hugging a judge and a prosecutor, representatives of a system that, in the judge's own words, had failed you?
I felt that I was able to begin a new life. And I was happy that I was able to start my life over to where years have passed. But the prosecutor, the judge, gave me another opportunity to do the right thing without anyone taking advantage of me this time. So I felt great, I feel great, and I will continue in my community to do what I do. And that's helping anyone that I encounter and making anyone's day brighter than what it has been. And to where right now I'm a home health aide and I work on a school bus because I love working with autistic children. I have learned a lot from them and they teach me how they want to be treated, and I'm able to treat everybody the way I want to be treated.
Tell us a little bit more about how you got to do the work that you're doing now.
I can pass a background check.
So we talked a little bit about your experience going through the criminal justice system as a child. How did the experience of having been forced into sex work and being victimized, and then going into the courtroom and being criminalized for something you were being forced to do, how did that impact your impression of the criminal justice system?
Y'all want me to be honest? Can I show of hands of who wants me to be honest? I thought they were full of shit.
What did it feel like to be in a courtroom again and to be acknowledged as the human that you are, and for your victim status to finally be acknowledged in a court of law?
What was it like? I thought I was dreaming. I thought it was a dream. But I felt better. And I says, dag, somebody's finally coming to me and understanding what happened to me, to where there is somebody out there who cares and somebody who wanted me to share my story.
So we have a lot of representatives from all different walks of life within the criminal justice system in the room with us today. What recommendations do you have for them in terms of the work they do?
Do your best. Get to understand people. Get to know people. It can be someone else out there, like myself, who has a story, who was taken advantage of, to where in life, when you're not taught nothing, you don't know nothing. And unfortunately, at a young age, I wasn't taught anything. And by me not being taught anything, a lot of bad things happened to me, and to where I made a lot of bad decisions, to where be a good ear and understand. And I know everyone out here has to do their job, but everyone is not a criminal. I'm no longer a victim, I am a survivor.
That's right. All right, I think we have a couple minutes left. Do you have any closing words you want to leave with people? Otherwise, we will open it up for questions.
No.
Okay. Does anyone have questions for Tracy?
So I recognize she's sitting right next to you, but can you talk a little bit about the power of having an effective defense attorney and what that did for you?
It's very powerful. It can get you on the right track back in life. I felt like I was in hell for a long time. It's like I didn't know how to live. Like I had no life. Like the best thing I could have done was go to McDonald's. They'll hire me to where I didn't have to do a background check, and to where I had jobs, and to where the jobs used my record against me. They hired me because I was able to do a great job. But if anything happened, they would make sure, you got a record. And that was some BS, as we all know. And to where having a powerful defense attorney helped me to never go through that again. Because employees play games. They will hire an employee, but they will steady use your record to keep you in check. And I'm here to say, no one can keep me in check. I got this.
I must start by thanking you for exposing yourself in this way. It's challenging emotionally. And then I want to ask you, was there ever a time that you were in a court without an attorney?
I can tell you some things, but I'd rather not say it, sir. I've always had an attorney in court.
Okay. When you had those attorneys, after a time, I assume that your prior convictions began to become the topic of discussion with those attorneys. Is that right?
Everything was plea deal, to where they pick you up and to where you plead guilty, you get time served. Meaning, I'm going home. I don't want to be in the bookings. I want to go home. So I had no choice but to plead guilty in order to go home. It was either fight the case on Rikers Island or plead guilty and I can go home. I have never been institutionalized for too long, and I didn't want to be institutionalized, so I took the guilty plea. Okay, I'm guilty. I had no choice. I only had two: go to jail or go home. I chose home.
Thank you.
You're welcome, sir.
Anyone else have questions for Tracy?
Come on, somebody else has to have a question.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I'm curious about Mac. The Mac Diaz, it's the person you went to see first at Bronx Defenders, right?
Yes.
Tell me what his role was and what his what he did for you, and then I actually have a question, if it's permissible for Zoe as well, to talk a little bit more about that team of yours and what it was for him to do and how that applied to Tracy's case.
At Bronx Defenders, Mr. Mac Diaz is the intake coordinator, to where if you're in need of a lawyer or a defender or whatever, he will point you in the right direction. To where in this case, he wanted me to try it on my own before he even got involved. To where he wanted actual evidence that probation wasn't doing their job. And to where when he seen I couldn't do it on my own, that's when he got involved. And he started a paper trail. I love Mr. Diaz.
Yes, Matt Diaz is the fantastic intake coordinator at the Bronx Defenders, who I had asked if anyone came in through the intake office who had prostitution convictions on their record, please refer them to me, because I was starting a project called the Prostitution Conviction Vacature Project, which was working solely on helping clients who had convictions on their record that were the result of sex trafficking get those convictions vacated from their record. So through that project and through the Bronx Defenders holistic model, we were able to sign Tracy, not only me as a criminal defense lawyer, but we had some pro bono attorneys who helped work on the motion. We had a housing attorney who was also helping Tracy. We had a civil attorney who was helping her with her claim against ACS. We had a social worker involved in the case, and we had an investigator on standby. So one of the most amazing things about the holistic model at the Bronx Defenders is that each client really gets wraparound services based on whatever their needs are. So if a client has a family defense case, they get assigned a family defense attorney. If they have an immigration case, they get an immigration attorney. And it ensures that the services that a client is receiving are not solely revolving around their criminal case, because for any client, chances are there are many issues that brought them into the system, and many issues are going to arise as a result of their involvement in the system. So in recognizing that, the Bronx Defenders offers not only criminal attorneys, but immigration attorneys, family defense attorneys, civil attorneys, client advocates, investigators, and social workers.
Good afternoon to you, Ms. Tracy.
Good afternoon, sir.
I'm Dante Blue with Contra Costa County, and my question to you is a little bit about your experiences. So I think you kind of used the technical term foolish on the front end, right? What you were going through. But yet, when the judge spoke about the system, she apologized. And it took this Bronx defender that came and let you tell your story and use that in an advocacy role to pursue justice for you. So I'd like you to talk a little bit about, in thinking about that, how would you describe now your experience going through that last court hearing that ended in hugs and tears? Well, what is your view of the justice system now in terms of justice achieved?
I feel totally different. I feel like justice has been served as far as my end, to where I feel other people should have an opportunity to go back into court and to be able to tell their stories too. To where I don't think it just stops with me.
What amazing marching orders to leave us with. Thank you so much, Tracy, and thank you everyone for your contributions and questions for her.